on tight and it'll be okay. We will overcome.
Hello and a warm welcome to the first of a series of webinars exploring the crimes that most harm children and young people and how we may combat the effects of those crimes, supporting recovery so they can go on to lead fulfilling lives and achieve their potential. It's a big topic, and that's why we decided to host the sessions over a number of days. This is the first time that Embrace has held a virtual conference, and we thank our partner, CJS Events, providing the platform and the know-how to ensure we reach as many interested partners and individuals as possible. Our plan is to hold future events like this so we can keep you informed of the trends in crime and support. And yes, you won't be surprised that you'll also learn more about the work of the charity and how we continue to evolve and develop to ensure our unique packages of support, tailored to individuals and families, are the very best available. So we're going to go on to the housekeeping now. Before we begin, there are a few points that I should explain to enable you to get the most from this experience. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application engagement tools you can use. All the tools are resizable and movable, so please feel free to move them around. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If you have any questions for our speakers during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool. We will try to answer these in a panel session at the end of the presentations with Embrace Chief Executive Anne Campbell. But if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Please know we do capture all questions and your feedback is really important to us. A copy of today's slide deck and additional help materials are available in the resource list. We encourage you to download any resources or links that you may find useful. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection, closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. Webinars are bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browser tabs will help conserve your bandwidth. The webinar is being streamed through your computer, so there is a no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. Some networks cause slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended if your slides are behind. Pushing F5 on your keyboard will also refresh the page. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help Engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 1 day after the webcast and can be accessed using the same audience link that you used to access this session. Without further delay, I am delighted to introduce our speaker panel for our first session, entitled, How Can We Protect the Next Generation? Making sense of the facts, trends, and outcome of crime affecting our young people. Our opening webinar scopes the crimes that are damaging the futures of young lives. If we accept that children are the most vulnerable members of our society, it follows that we must prioritise working together on strategies that keep children safe. Police and crime commissioners hold the budget for services for victims, so we'll learn what they are doing to support children, young people, and families. First, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce a well-known face and a household name for many of us, Baroness Floella Benjamin, a tireless campaigner for children, and fortunately for us, a hard-working ambassador of Embrace, with her reminder that childhood really does last a lifetime. Floella is followed by the chair of Embrace, Sir Paul Stephenson, who previews what the webinars have in store for us. Sir Paul has been at the helm of the Board of Trustees for over 2 years and is steering a steady path of development. He's well placed to understand the effects of crime as a former Chief Constable of Lancashire Police and a former Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. Our final keynote speaker today, Paddy Tipping, is Nottinghamshire's Police and Crime Commissioner and will outline the association's position and activities to highlight the issues affecting those youngsters who, through no fault of their own, are harmed by crime, either directly or as witnesses. Police and crime commissioners hold the budget for services for victims and decide how those budgets are spent. I hope you enjoy our programme, which today is opened by Baroness Floella Benjamin.
Hello everyone, it's great to join you virtually because we are kindred spirits, and the fact that you're present means you are guardian angels of the future, our children. I always say childhood lasts a lifetime because everything we do affects children and stays with them for the rest of their lives. Sometimes it's only when we have our own children that we realize how much influence our childhood has on our behavior. So the guidance, love, and inspiration we show children during those early years matters enormously. This is why I have dedicated my whole life to getting society to put children's interests first. That started off 44 years ago in the iconic program Play School, when I took millions of children through the windows, singing to them, dancing, playing games, telling them stories. That dedication for children has taken me on a journey right through to the House of Lords, where I'm working tirelessly for the benefit of children's well-being. In Parliament, 7 years ago, I set up an all-party parliamentary group called A Fit and Healthy Childhood, which I co-chair. The group deals with all the issues that affects children's well-being, and the recommendations in our reports have helped to shape government's policy. This is so important to me because I personally see the results of laying a solid foundation for children's lives to be built on. Every day I get an email, a tweet, a letter from what I call one of my Play School babies, telling me they could feel how much I loved them when I appeared on my children's programs. Many say they had terrible childhoods. Nobody loved them, but how I was the shining light that came into their lives because of the way I talked to them through the screen. How I was there for them and made them feel safe. What a privilege that is. What a privilege to share that with children. And I have shown this dedication not just in my children's programs. Yes, I've been involved in many children's charities over the years, and I do so because not every child gets a bright, happy, safe start in life. Isn't that sad? So I am proud to be an ambassador of this important charity, Embrace Child Victims of Crime, because there is no other organization which does exactly what we do. We are determined to bring joy into children's lives, to champion the cause of children and young people who through no fault of their own are affected by crime, regardless of the type of crime, either directly or indirectly, or as witnesses. And in today's brutal world, children are experiencing so many different types of crime. Think of all the children and young people who witnessed knife crime, seen their schoolmates violently murdered. Just think of the trauma they go through. Kids with their whole lives ahead of them. Imagine having to live with that without counselling. Thank goodness for Embrace Child Victims of Crime. When I first met Anne Campbell, the chief executive of this charity, I cried. I cried when she told me the story of the little girl who was drugged and abused in her own bed by her father late at night. This innocent child, a gift to the world, knew nothing about this shocking intrusion. Her teachers were puzzled by the listless behavior she was showing, so couldn't help her, and told me how the charity did help her, help that precious little thing to come to terms with the trauma, to enable her to find solace. And also told me about the many more cases the charity has had to deal with. And there are many. But what I love was the flexibility of the approach the charity has to young victims of crime. Embrace Child Victims of Crime believes that each child has a different need, and this must be acknowledged as it develops its services, showing consideration. These services range from support for those in financially challenged families to enable them to meet basic needs, to lending an ear to those who just want someone to listen. The service could be to give therapeutic counselling for those traumatized by crime. Sometimes victims just need a break. And working with our partners, the charity is able to offer opportunities to create for children new and happier memories. And childhood lasts a lifetime. Anne also knows of my association with the teddy bears on Play School, Big Ted and Little Ted. So she knew I would have a soft spot for Alfie, the charity's bear and mascot. But Alfie is much more than a cuddly toy. He is synonymous with Alfie's Hardship Fund, which was launched as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Alfie is on a mission. Yes, the charity is sending out a steady stream of practical support in the shape of family packages, essentials, entertainment and educational items, with the option of a telephone or online emotional support for children struggling to cope. For many low-income families who are already battling with the effects of crime, the pandemic was the final straw. So we at Embrace Child Victims of Crime can't thank all of you enough who have answered our appeal for help for those victims of crime. It has enabled us to send Alfie packages all over the country to those in desperate need. It breaks my heart to say this, but research has shown that during the pandemic, violent crime and domestic abuse in the home have increased. And sadly, it was not always reported. But now that children have returned to school, we expect there to be an increase in referrals. It makes me weep to think for the first time in months, children will be returning to their only safe place, their school. So the charity's vital services and those of other organizations will be needed even more than ever, even more important than ever. Just think, right now, there's a child crying out for our help and support. We have to be there for them and do whatever we can to make a difference. As I said, I took millions of children through the round window, the square window, and the arched window to a safe place that made them feel secure and cherished. I made them feel worthy and as though they belonged to a world filled with unconditional love. Because, I'll say it again, childhood lasts a lifetime. This is why part of my soul belongs to Embrace Child Victims of Crime, as I want the charity to reach out to those children who feel a sense of hopelessness, to let the children know we will do our utmost to create a brighter future for them so that they can pass on happy memories to their children. We have to empower them to keep smiling, because winners smile. So I hope you will be part of our mission to change the world and protect all children who are victims of crime. Remember, you are guardian angels of the future. And to help you do that, I'm sending you all virtual hugs. And remember, wherever you go and whatever happens to you, there will always, always, always be somebody who loves you. And that's me, Floella. Thank you very much.
I think it's only right and proper that I start and thank our sponsors. Our main sponsor, Slater and Gordon, who've been working with us for a number of years now, and also those companies who are sponsoring individual webinars, Celerity, Cancom and CVent. And in addition to that, of course, our media partner, Policing Insight. We are deeply grateful to your assistance. Not only does your funding support and assistance allow us to put this event on, but actually keeps us going over the years to provide the best possible services we can to children and their families. So thank you very much. I could say that this event was born out of necessity. COVID-19 meant a change for all of us. Live events have been put on hold and we are no different. Having quickly adapted our service delivery to telephone and online support and seeing how successful that's been, we decided to consider how we might replace some of our corporate plans, and this corporate conference has been this virtual conference rather has been the result. Most of us, I'm sure, are well fed up of this, living with the virus and the necessary consequences that we all have to do to ensure we keep everyone safe. Whilst we will be acknowledging how crime has disproportionately affected children and young people, especially during lockdown, our webinars are designed to take a broader look at the key crimes that are destroying childhoods and leaving legacies of unhappy, disturbed and underachieving young people. Embrace was one of the first children's charities to focus on the issue of trauma and how it can devastate young lives unless it's recognised and then treated. Our trauma-focused CBT talking therapist programme have been very successful in giving young people strategies for coping and helping them to recover from its debilitating effects. We'll hear from at least one survivor who bravely tells his story to help others. He suffered dreadfully, but thanks to the right kind of support from the right kind of people, he has come through and is now truly inspirational to any and all young people, not just those who can identify with the horrors that he went through. Domestic abuse, that hidden crime, and sadly more routinely happening in homes than we'd like to think. It has far-reaching, huge far-reaching effects on everyone involved, but particularly the younger generation. One important review that came out during this pandemic finds an overlap between children's experience of domestic abuse and children's offending behaviour. Why should we be surprised? The report suggests that a quarter of the children who are identified as having socially unacceptable behaviour also have identified concerns about domestic abuse by a parent or carer. Now, I'm proud that the board of Embrace, all of whom are passionate about supporting young people to be their best, includes the National Policing Portfolio Leads for key areas of our business. We'll hear from Chief Constable Joe Shiner of Sussex Police, the National Police Chiefs Council Lead for Children and Young People. Jo and her team have a deep understanding of the issues, and it will be fascinating to look at how agencies and partners are increasingly working together to create the best conditions for our young people. Sussex, by coincidence, is also the home of an innovative programme for children, and we'll hear what Reboot is and how it works to divert children away from crime. A session to be looked forward to, I think. Understanding the social impact of increasing domestic abuse and violence is the title of the first webinar that investigates these closely linked crimes. We know that those children who experience domestic abuse, either as a victim or as a witness, are sometimes more likely to seek alternative relationships outside of the home, leaving them vulnerable to sexual exploitation or involvement with other criminal activities. We've seen that far too often. The work of the Internet Watch Foundation in ruthlessly searching out and removing inappropriate imagery online is critical to our success in safeguarding children and preventing their exploitation by adults posing as friends. I'm delighted that we will hear from the IWF's Chief Executive, Susie Hargreaves, who leads this fight and will explain just how easy it is for our children to become victims of internet predators. David Llewellyn, Police and Crime Commissioner for Dyfed Powys, is also a father of a young family, and his perspective on cybercrime and sexploitation follows Susie Hargreaves in our webinar, Tackling the 24/7 Online Threat to Keep Young People Safe from the Hidden Dangers of the Internet. David, and we're very fortunate in this regard, is also a colleague on the Embrace Management Board. This series of webinars really does have something for everyone. And our session on gang culture is, I think, another not to miss session, something we read about far too often in our newspapers and hear about on the TV. We hear from, by his own admission, a once violent gang member who took a decision to turn away from violence, from the violence he was involved in, to become a campaigner, who now works tirelessly to divert children away from that insidious gang culture. Sheldon Thomas is the founder of Gangs Online. A very interesting session, I should think. Leading this webinar, Protecting Our Young People and Reducing Exploitation, is Dr. Jackie Sabir. Jackie is the national lead for the Police Chiefs Council. She's a portfolio lead for violent crime and was key in setting up one of the country's leading violence and exploitation reduction units, and is an ardent campaigner for looked after children, particularly those in unregulated care homes. Jackie, who now works as the lead officer for the vulnerable people in Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, is again a member of the management board of Embrace, and we are very fortunate that she is. For many years now, sexual violence was the main reason for referral into our services, and in recent years, this has been joined by domestic abuse, as we understand the importance of this indicator crime. We knew for a long time that many children referred as victims of sexual violence were living in homes where domestic abuse was taking place. Embrace's services to support these children have been evolving over recent years, together with our understanding of the needs of parents and guardians. They continue to evolve and adapt to the circumstances that we face, mindful of the need to consider whether the child is exhibiting behaviours linked to trauma. You know, Embrace is on a journey where all our services, whether they are delivered singly or as a package, will be trauma informed. Exactly what this means is explained by Nicola Lester, who has developed a common sense delivery model and has worked with the victims of the Manchester bombings and military families who had suffered so dreadfully from trauma. This is a key thread of our future delivery model. Now, I'm quite convinced that you're in for a very successful series of seminars from speakers who are specialists in their field, experts. We hope that by delivering them in bite-sized chunks, you will be able to fit them into your busy schedules. You will also be able to revisit them afterwards, as they will be available to download for a period of time. So once again, my thanks to the CJS Events team for their groundbreaking work, and I hope you're all able to benefit from what I think is a comprehensive programme of issues delivered by the people who know about them the best, the experts. Thank you very much.
Nobody denies it's been a tough year. Recent months have been unprecedented, and it's been really hard for all of us. But I'm particularly concerned about the position of young people and children. And it was hard back in March. 750,000 young people were not in education or employment, the so-called NEETs. The estimate is that over the pandemic, over the past few months, an extra 600,000 young people have been out of school, out of education, out of training. And it's tough for them, and it's going to be tough for all of us, because that means that there'll be more than 1 million young people who are not actively involved. And the children and young people haven't been able to go to school, they haven't been able to go to college, and being out of touch without support for 6 months really is very difficult. And getting back to any kind of normality is really going to be very hard for them. But there are some young people that have extra difficulties. And I want to talk about a youngster who's aged 17. Let's call him Stephen. Stephen was sexually abused by a family member, and that caused enormous difficulties for him. He was referred to a local organisation called IMARA, who set about trying to help him. And the first thing was that he wasn't able to get back into college. The trauma of the assault had caused him that much difficulty he couldn't relate to college. In fact, he'd been thrown out. And the Chisler at Imara helped him to get back into college, linked him with college, and he's now, hopefully this autumn, going to be back on track. And again, as a result of the assault, he dropped out of the therapy he was going to. And again, the workers at Imara worked really hard to ensure that the therapy was reinstated and he was able to go forward. But his big concern was about going to court and facing the person who'd assaulted him. And he was saying very strongly, I'm not going to do this, it's too hard for me. And again, Imara talked to him, counselled him, worked with him, and ensured that he was confident about going to court. And it's taken him to court. He's had a look around the courtroom. They've linked him with the police officer who's involved. So all those 3 steps were really important to take him forward. But his health was suffering too. And Imara helped him through counselling, through teaching him to breathe properly and get himself together better than he'd been in the past. So there's a long way to go for Stephen, but he's on the road to recovery. And we know that sexual assaults take a long time to overcome. But he is healing, he is going forward. And I think the point I just really want to make in conclusion is this, that all young people have had a difficult few months, 6 months of unprecedented trauma. And we've got to use the period coming out of the pandemic to try and look towards young people. Because although young people get a bad press in the popular press, they're a force for good. They're a force for change. And with proper support, we can help even those with the most tremendous difficulties through. So, congratulations to Stephen. Congratulations to Imara, which is an award-winning organisation that I partly fund. And let's be clear that if we want that better future, that new future that's in front of us, we've got to invest in young people and in children. Because young people are not just their future, but all our futures. Let's work together, even in these difficult times, to build that better and brighter future. It's going to be tough. It has been tough, but together we can do it.
A big thank you to our presenters today, who have certainly given us food for thought about how we can prevent children and young people being harmed by crime, and if they are, how we can support them to cope and recover. I believe we've had some questions submitted, so over to you, Anne, to hear what our audience have been asking.
Hello everyone, thanks for registering to watch our webinars and the first one today. We've now heard from our three speakers, Floella Benjamin, our fantastic ambassador, our chair, Sir Paul Stephenson, and the new chair of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, Paddy Tipping. We know that a number of you have some questions and that the lines are now open. So please ask your question and I'll be assisted by my team here in answering them. Just so that you know what's going to happen, those that we can answer live now, we will. If questions come in where we do need to do a little bit more research, then we will find out the answers and publish the questions and their answers on the page. So there'll always be a Q&A continuing. So hopefully that's clear. Do send me your questions. I have seen one, and it seems to be directed at Embrace, so I will answer that. And we're being asked, how are we going to survive an ongoing pandemic when the fundraising opportunities are very, shall we say, curtailed? That's certainly been the case, and since April there have been virtually zero events where people can participate and become sponsored to run marathons. We all know that this is something that's affecting not just Embrace, but all charities. So what can we do to try and replace what is effectively lost income? Embrace has taken the view that we need to continue and redouble our efforts to encourage donations from the public. We have been running a number of virtual events which encourage people to be sponsored to take part in their event. I'm reminded of one fundraiser for us from Suffolk, who on his static cycle in the garden a couple of months ago rode or cycled the equivalent mileage from Land's End to John O'Groats. He did an absolutely amazing feat there, and the money came in to support John. So John from Suffolk, I know you're a retired detective. Thank you hugely for that. In terms of how we're raising funds through other channels, then the grant and trust funds are very important to us, as well as our corporate supporters. And the corporates who have very kindly sponsored the event today, we just couldn't have put it on without them. A big thank you. I know they've already been thanked by our chair, but Slater and Gordon have been series sponsors. So we will see their logo across all of the 5 subsequent webinars. So thanks to them, and our media partner, Policing Insight, we will continue to work with them too. So corporate funding is extremely important, never more so. Grant and trust fund income, really important for us. And I suppose what I'm saying is that we'll continue our diversified income stream and redouble our efforts to try and make sure that the income does still keep coming in. I think that's probably the best I can answer on that. We know it's going to be tough. We are concentrating efforts to streamline as much as we possibly can in order to make sure that all the money goes to supporting the beneficiaries. There were many thousands of beneficiaries last year, and we have absolutely no intention of reducing that number. So the team have got a lot of work to do, but thank you for that question, and thank you for giving me the opportunity of answering. I probably should have also mentioned another form of income for us, and that is one that we've been working on for a few years, where we supply services to police and crime commissioners and other local authorities. And I've got to say that this has probably been easily our fastest growing area of support. So talking therapies, emotional support, making sure there is someone there for all the children that need help. That is what we do. That is the focus of our new HQ, where there will be a bank of phones. Obviously, the pandemic, in a way, has accelerated our previous plans to take all our services online and on the phone. That actually is now where we're at. So that's it's an exciting challenge for the future. Not just because of the pandemic, but certainly it is going to make sure that we have to raise our game, and we will continue to do that. Got a question here from Sandra Beaton. Why do the public service agencies need grant funding for this work? I don't know if Emma Foodie from Mr. Tipping's office is on the line and can hear me, but that would probably be an opportunity for you, Emma, to explain what commissioners actually do and where your monies come from. Emma.
Thank you. So in terms of our commissioning budget, I mean, I'm sure people are aware that some victim services are funded nationally, and then a significant chunk of it is then effectively devolved to police and crime commissioners to make decisions for their area. And I think that at the heart of that, the idea is that one area may not have exactly the same requirements as another area, and the idea obviously is to try and provide that level of devolved decision making so that decisions can be made around what the priorities are for particular areas so that they can make decisions effectively. That's inevitably a challenge as different agencies will be competing and different organisations will be competing for different areas of work. I mean, it has allowed us to make some quite innovative and creative and strong partnerships in the area, which is a really positive thing. However, I appreciate that it provides a level of uncertainty for organisations when it comes to their funding from one year to the next. I think Paddy talked a little bit about the work that we've been able to do within Nottinghamshire, specifically around the services that we've been able to provide to child victims of domestic abuse and sexual violence, which we've been able to develop through some really good partnership work in. But I think it is a good question as to why has this model been kind of decided upon, and I think it does provide some challenges inevitably, but I think at the root of it, it is about trying to empower local decision making.
Thanks, Emma. That's great. I'm also looking now at a question from Karen Livesey, who says, she's typed, we know about the significance of key relationships with children and young people for effective intervention, but what other tools or resources are out there for workers? I certainly think this is a very good question too, because increasingly, certainly from Embrace's perspective, we're working with schools and providing resources for them. And in fact, just fairly recently, in the past couple of months, our very highly respected trauma-focused counselling team have produced some videos aimed at adults to help them to understand how to best support their child or children within their care. They are available on YouTube, and I think certainly the production of such resources that are going to work alongside the services is really important. I don't know, Emma, if that's something you would also like to comment on. whilst I wait for Emma to come in, I can say that on the site, those of you who are with us today can see on the left-hand side there will be resources, more resources being added as we progress through the webinars. Not just Embrace resources, but also linking into other organisations as well. We very much take on board our task as a partnership task. It's really important that organisations work together so we can complement each other and not duplicate. And that's something that's certainly very important to us. Emma, any comments on resources, anything that you're aware of that may be happening either at a local or national level that might be helpful? It looks as if we've got a slight issue on the mute button. Emma is telling me that she doesn't seem to be able to be unmuted, in which case I'll ask Emma to email or to write down her response, and again we'll publish that. Just keeping an eye on the time. If there are any more questions for our colleagues and the team today, please do keep sending them in, because as I say, we will publish a selection of the questions and the answers. This is, I know it's not new technology, but it's certainly new to Embrace, and we're incredibly important or incredibly pleased to be taking part and giving the opportunity to spread not just our message, but those of our partners far and wide. One of them, I recognise this person as a key member of our partner team, who's asking, what are the biggest challenges when trying to deliver support to children in their families in the current climate? I think if I may, I can say we were certainly before March, all our services were delivered face-to-face, counselling and emotional support primarily. And a lot of those conversations actually took place in a safe environment in schools. Obviously, with the closure of the schools, they were not, we couldn't use those premises. So the switch from going from face-to-face to online or telephone, it's had its challenges, and certainly we felt for the young people who were in face-to-face counselling, and most of them, I would say over 90%, did agree to take the relationship online and or by the phone. So it certainly was a challenge, but I think working together and listening to what the young people said, how did they want to continue the relationship, how did they want to communicate with their support worker or their counsellor. Yes, that's actually the most important thing of all. So we continue to listen to them and be guided by how they want to receive their services. But there are certainly some challenges in delivering support to children and young people. Just having to change the mode of that support is just but one. I'd probably still say that the hardest challenge of all is actually raising the money, because we know that there are many, many, many thousands of children who could do with a little bit of help before things get too serious. We want to be able to offer a service to all of them, but unfortunately our resources don't allow that. But again, you know, that is something that is not our problem alone. Now, has Emma managed to unmute? We've got a question here from Luton Council. One of the speakers mentioned a report making the link between children affected by domestic abuse and antisocial behaviour. What's the report called and where can I find it? Thanks. I actually can answer this because I'm aware it's a report which followed research commissioned by the Victims Commissioner for England and Wales, Dame Vera Baird. And Dame Vera's report was published in April, so during lockdown, and it is available on their website. Again, that sounds as if the press release needs to be a resource added to our left-hand column, so we'll make sure that that happens. So thank you for that question, Kate McDermott from Luton Council. Another question here I think that I can answer from Joyce Khan, Blackburn with Darwen, by Lancashire. How far do you reach out is Joyce's question. Please could you advise how a young person could find you? We're in Lancashire. Okay, we cover England, Wales and Scotland primarily. We are looking for fundraisers all over the country. And I think it's really important that I stress that where money is raised for embraced child victims of crime, we ring-fence those monies to be spent back in those communities. That's a really important principle of ours, and it's worked really well. So back over 20 years ago, we were founded by police officers following the terrorist bomb in Warrington, and we've grown and produced, or at least grown a lot since then. And that's really where the fundraising started. Police forces were fundraising for us, and that worked very well. Obviously, things change over the years, but certainly those principles that began all those years ago have not changed. We will spend the money where it is raised. We also are making sure that our services are available for commissioning or to be commissioned, and we are commissioned in a number of counties, including West Yorkshire. But of course, we're always open to new conversations. We're currently talking to one of the counties in Wales, and due to the funding that we're looking to be made available there, we're looking at forming a jointly funded post to distribute our services. So Joyce, we do cover the country and we make the money work as hard as possible. How a young person can find us is actually quite simple. Just look onto our website. It's embracecvoc.org.uk, and there's information and resources on the site, and also our phone number, which is an 0345 number. Hopefully we'll look forward to hearing from you again, and thank you very much for the message. Any other questions here that I can see? Jessica Phillips from the NHS is saying, did you say your work with young people has changed because of the pandemic? Yes, it has, Jessica. We mainly did or had counselling relationships and emotional support relationships direct face-to-face in safe places. We were planning to increase the ways we delivered that support to include online and telephone, and we had actually just done our first batch of training for our counsellors on the 5th of March. So when the pandemic and the lockdown came, those counsellors who had been trained were ready from the get-go to provide that support in a different way. So it was part of the planning, and I would say that the pandemic has accelerated it. So therefore, our transition from face-to-face to online and telephone has been relatively smooth, because the planning was already there. The plans had already been laid. sometimes timing does work for us. Okay, I think we're probably coming towards the end of our time. I think we're actually over time. So there's another question here that's just coming in. There are a few questions. I think we will take them online on email, and we'll publish them. But we've had questions from all sorts of different agencies. Absolutely great to see. Lovely to see so many different agencies engaging with us. We want to talk with you, so I hope we'll continue the conversation long after this webinar, and in fact the series ends. So we've got 4 more webinars, 2 more this week. That's Wednesday and Thursday, looking at specific crime types and how they affect young children and teenagers. And then on the last day, or rather next week, we are looking at violent crime, knife crime, and the effectiveness of the violence reduction work that is going on. It's a really interesting programme. I've got to say we're delighted that so many good speakers have come forward with really different perspectives on the issue. So thank you to all of those. And before I sign off, my personal thanks and those of my team to CJS Events for putting this webinar on for us. Certainly a big thank you to our series sponsors, Slater & Gordon, also CVent, Celerity, and Policing Insight. So big thank you. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Bye from me.